Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name's Noah Riley. I turned 52 last month, but that milestone didn't come with a cake or candles, it came with a cardboard box and 2 weeks severance. 15 years of my life, gone with one signature. I was a senior driver for Ironcrest Freight, based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. When I started, it was just me, old man Hal Cooper, and 2 rusted rigs we maintained ourselves in a gravel lot behind a warehouse. I stayed with the company as it grew, from a small-town outfit to a regional freight hauler with over 30 trucks. I watched it rise mile by mile, relationship by relationship. I wasn't just a driver. I was the guy the clients knew by name. The guy who could find a backroad route through a flood. The guy who never missed a delivery window. You don't last 15 years in freight without knowing how to solve problems before they hit the asphalt. But when Cooper sold the company to some investment group from Chicago, I knew the tides were turning. At first, it was little things, mandatory tracking apps, performance metrics, fewer holiday bonuses. Then came Darren Blake, the new operations manager. MBA type. Shiny shoes. Never touched a gearshift in his life. He looked at the company and didn't see people, he saw legacy costs. And I was the biggest one. 3 weeks ago, I pulled in after a 3-day haul to Denver. Darren was waiting, arms crossed, lips tight. His glass-walled office looked like a fishbowl filled with spreadsheets and smugness. He didn't even look me in the eye. Noah, we're restructuring. Nothing personal, just the numbers. The kid who replaced me was still in the break room, eating vending machine chips with his boots on the table. Darren pushed a stack of termination papers across the desk. 2 weeks of severance. That was it. I didn't argue. Didn't beg. I handed over my keys, badge, and gas card. Walked out without a word. But as I sat in my truck outside the yard, staring at the building I helped build, 1 mile at a time, I didn't feel anger. I felt hollow. Then my phone buzzed. Bill Carmichael from Bluestone Foods, just heard what happened. Call me. Maria from Lakelands, you serious not driving for us anymore? Let's talk. Jerry from Western Distributing, tell me you didn't get canned. We need to talk. I didn't answer any of them. Not yet. I needed time to think. I just drove home in silence, windows down, the Oklahoma wind whipping through the empty cab. At home, Elaine wasn't surprised. My wife had seen this coming before I did. They don't fire the workhorse, she said. They shoot it. She wasn't wrong. I went out back and sat on our porch until the stars came out. I thought about the late nights, the ice storms, the breakdowns in the middle of nowhere. I remembered the time I stayed on the road 40 hours straight to get ventilators to a hospital during that bad winter storm in 2017. I remembered the Christmas cards from dock managers, the phone calls at 2 a.m. from panicked warehouse supervisors who said, "We called you because we trust you." And now, I was replaced. Like a part that got too expensive. But they'd forgotten one thing. In freight, diesel moves the trucks. But trust moves the freight. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm for the first time in years. No logbook to update. No rig to warm up. Just an aching stillness. Elaine had already left for her shift at the hospital, and the silence in the house was suffocating. I poured a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the worn leather of my calloused hands. They were used to gripping a steering wheel, changing a tire on the shoulder of an icy highway, pulling open stubborn trailer doors. Now they just sat there, idle. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Bill Carmichael. Noah, I'm not playing around. Meet me for coffee. My team's pissed. I wanted to ignore it. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone. But something in me, maybe pride, maybe pure survival, told me I needed to go. We met at Riverside Cafe. Bill was already in the booth, 2 cups of coffee steaming on the table. No pleasantries. No warm-up. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. I explained everything, from the sudden firing to Darren's spreadsheet reasoning. Bill listened, then shook his head slowly. "You ever stop to think why we stuck with Ironcrest all these years?" he asked. "It wasn't the price. It wasn't the trucks. It was you, Noah." I looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. "You saved us, more than once," he continued. "When our warehouse freezer failed. You drove 300 miles through a blizzard to get us a backup unit. When our shipment to the VA clinic got rerouted by accident, you made sure it got delivered on a holiday. My staff knows you by name. Hell, my daughter asked if Uncle Noah was still bringing her birthday cookies. I didn't know what to say. We have a 30-day opt-out clause in our Ironcrest contract," he said. "If you're going somewhere else, we'll follow." The words hit like a truck. I wasn't looking for a new job. I wasn't even sure I wanted to keep driving. But Bill's loyalty planted something in me, a tiny seed of defiance. By noon, Jerry from Western had said the same thing. And by nightfall, Maria from Lakelands left a voicemail that ended with, "Wherever you land, we're landing too." It should have felt good. But instead, it made the weight in my chest heavier. Because I had no plan. Elaine came home to find me sitting in the dark, my old logbook spread across the dining table. She didn't say anything at first. Just took off her scrubs, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat across from me. "They still need you," she said gently. "But do you still need this?" That question haunted me all night. The following day, I drove to the old Ironcrest lot, not to beg, not to cause a scene, but to pick up my thermos, the family photo from my locker, and say goodbye to a few of the guys I trained. I saw Darren through the office window, barking orders, pointing at graphs on a screen. Probably planning his next cost-cutting trick. In the break room, I found Alejandro and Doug, 2 younger drivers I mentored over the years. "They've got us running double shifts," Doug whispered. "Barely time for meals. They fired Paul last week after he clocked out 15 minutes late." Alejandro added, "And the maintenance crew. Darren's cutting their hours. We had a rig blow a tire on I-40 last weekend. Barely missed a crash." That was all I needed to hear. I left without saying a word to Darren. But as I stepped into the parking lot, he followed. "Noah," he called out. "We've heard you've been talking to clients. Just know, those accounts are still ours." I turned slowly. "They called me," I said. "To ask why the guy they trusted for over a decade was suddenly gone." Darren's face tightened. "Don't test me. You signed non-compete and non-solicitation agreements." I remembered something Cooper once told me. Always read the fine print. Or better yet, have someone who did write it. "I signed a 10-year agreement," I said. "That was 15 years ago. Ask Cooper." His lips twitched. He hadn't done his homework. Still, he growled. "This is your only warning. Stay away from our clients." But he wasn't warning me. He was scared. Because deep down, Darren knew something he didn't want to admit. You can replace a driver. But you can't replace trust. That night, I sat on the porch again, watching the moon rise over the plains. I wasn't just a laid-off driver anymore. I was the man they underestimated. And that's always a mistake. Because they fired a man. But they woke up something far more dangerous. I didn't sleep much that night. While Elaine dozed upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by years of delivery logs, fuel receipts, and handwritten notes from clients. Not because I was clinging to the past, but because I was starting to see the future. The calls kept coming. Messages from logistics managers, small-town warehouse owners, even a retired dock supervisor from Sioux Falls. They all said the same thing. We trusted you, not the logo on the side of the truck. By morning, I had a plan, fuzzy, risky, maybe insane, but a plan. And for the first time since Darren pushed those papers across his desk, I felt something close to hope. I called Frank Callahan. An old friend. Former driver. Left Ironcrest last year after Darren cut his hours. You serious? He asked when I pitched the idea. Serious enough to put my house on the line if I have to. He whistled. You thinking about starting a company? I'm not just thinking, I said. I'm doing it. Frank didn't even hesitate. Then count me in. We met that afternoon at a quiet diner with a yellow notepad, a calculator, and two tired minds. Frank brought numbers. I brought names. And then came the phone call that changed everything. Patty. She'd been Ironcrest's dispatcher since Cooper's early days. Knew every route in the Midwest better than any GPS. Her voice was hushed, almost shaking. Noah, can you talk? I'm hiding in the file room. What's going on? She hesitated. Then dropped the bomb. They're shutting the Tulsa yard. I froze. What? They're moving operations to Kansas City. Cheaper taxes, they say. But no one here knows yet. I saw the internal memo. It's happening in 6 months. My stomach sank. 42 families worked that yard. Mechanics. Dispatchers. Drivers. Admin staff. Good people. Loyal people. Darren and his investors weren't just cutting corners, they were gutting the company. I had to tell you, Patty said. You deserve to know. So does everyone else. After she hung up, I sat in my truck outside the diner for an hour, staring at nothing. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about every person they were going to leave behind. Frank and I spent the next few days deep in planning mode. We researched startup permits, insurance requirements, lease options. He tapped into his 401k. I cashed out my emergency fund. We pooled everything we had and found a small warehouse on the east side of Tulsa with just enough room for 2 trucks, a break room, and 1 office. We called it Riley and Callahan Freight. The first call I made was to Bill Carmichael. I'm not ready to take everything, I told him, but if you trust me with part of your loads, just 20% to start, I'll show you I still deliver. He didn't even pause. Make the paperwork, Noah. I've been waiting for this call. By that weekend, Western Distributing and Lakelands had each committed partial loads as well. Nothing huge. But enough to get rolling. And then, another unexpected call came, this time from Cooper himself. I heard what's going on, he said. Darren's running my company into the dirt. I know, I said quietly. You really starting something new? Yes, sir. Good, he replied. Because I've still got friends in this business. And I'd rather see them with you than with the sharks. He paused. I've got some money put aside. Meant for a fishing boat. But maybe this is a better investment. I didn't know what to say. You helped build Ironcrest, he continued. Maybe it's time to build something better. With Cooper's investment, we bought a used Kenworth T680 and leased a second Freightliner Cascadia. Not fancy, but clean, reliable, and ready to haul. We hired one driver, Luis, a former Ironcrest veteran who left after Darren made him take a 20-hour back-to-back run without proper sleep. I'm in, Luis said. I'd rather work for a man who knows the road than a man who hides behind spreadsheets. The pieces were falling into place. And then the second bombshell dropped. Doug called me in a panic. Darren just sent a memo. They're cutting preventative maintenance funding across the board. Said it's non-essential spending. I felt sick. That's going to kill someone, I muttered. It gets worse, Doug said. They're pushing drivers to stretch logs. Asking us to do more runs in less time. It's illegal. And dangerous. Ironcrest was a ticking time bomb. And Darren was striking matches. Back at the office, Frank and I stared at our whiteboard. We had 3 clients, 2 trucks, 1 mechanic, and a mountain of logistics to manage. But we had something Darren didn't. Loyalty. Patty quit Ironcrest that same week and joined us as our dispatcher. She brought a flash drive with her, containing routes, maintenance records, and something else we hadn't expected. Proof. Buried in Ironcrest's files were spreadsheets showing falsified maintenance logs, manipulated delivery records, and insurance corner cutting that would make any DOT officer foam at the mouth. Darren wasn't just incompetent. He was criminally reckless. We didn't go to the press. Not yet. But we filed it away, because we knew it would come in handy. And with each new driver who walked away from Ironcrest and toward us, our resolve hardened. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was war. By the start of the next week, our whiteboard looked like a military battle plan. Frank handled operations and maintenance. Patty ran dispatch like a seasoned air traffic controller. And I handled the front lines, client meetings, route planning, and one-on-one conversations with every driver and warehouse manager who still believed in doing things right. We weren't just building a business. We were building a rescue ship for everyone Darren and his Wall Street backers were tossing overboard. And we knew we didn't have long. The memo Patty uncovered confirmed it. Ironcrest's Tulsa operation would be shut down in less than 6 months. The suits were betting no one would notice until the day trucks stopped rolling. But we were going to get there first. Frank leaned over the desk one night, red pen in hand. We can't afford to poach everyone. Not yet. I'm not trying to poach, I said. I'm trying to save the ones worth saving. We set priorities. First, secure long-term commitments from clients already showing signs of bailing on Ironcrest. Second, build a reliable fleet, nothing flashy, just solid rigs with good maintenance. Third, offer safety, respect, and fair wages to every driver we hired. I reached out to a contact I knew at Cornerstone Building Supply, Ironcrest's biggest client, worth nearly 30% of their revenue. I didn't expect a deal, just a conversation. But when I mentioned the Kansas City relocation, the man on the other end of the call nearly shouted. They told us they were expanding, not leaving Tulsa. That was Ironcrest's fatal flaw. Darren assumed his lies wouldn't catch up to him. But in this business, word travels faster than freight. I didn't try to sell him anything. I just told him the truth. We're not ready for your full volume, I admitted. But when we are, I'd love to earn your business the right way. He thanked me for the honesty. And 2 days later, he called back. Start with 15% of our loads. If it goes well, we'll talk again. The momentum snowballed. More clients started calling us instead of Ironcrest. A few even told me that Darren had tried slashing rates to keep their business. But they weren't buying it. He's like a used car salesman with a leaky engine, one logistics director said. It's not about the price. It's about who we trust to actually show up. Meanwhile, Frank found us 2 more used Peterbilts and negotiated a lease on a small warehouse we could use as a terminal. Jenkins, the former owner of Ironcrest, put in another round of funding. He stopped by our office every few days just to sip coffee with the drivers and shake their hands. Feels like the old days again, he said one morning. Back when it was about the road, not the revenue. And still, Ironcrest kept bleeding. Drivers were quitting weekly. Some joined us. Others left the industry entirely. Maintenance issues were piling up. Late deliveries were becoming common. And Darren? He was flailing. That's when I made my move. I printed 12 formal letters, each addressed to a top Ironcrest client. Each one outlined 3 things. 1. My departure and the reasons behind it. 2. The confirmed shutdown of the Tulsa operations. 3. A quiet invitation to move some of their freight to us, no hard sell, no pressure, just a promise to deliver the way they deserved. I hand-delivered each one. Sat across from every manager. Shook hands. Answered questions. Took ownership of my past and accountability for their future. The result? 8 said yes. 4 said they were watching closely. That was more than enough. We could barely keep up. Frank worked 16-hour days. Patty juggled 6 drivers and a patchwork of routes. I got back behind the wheel myself just to meet a delivery window to a warehouse in Kansas City that hadn't received an on-time shipment from Ironcrest in 3 weeks. But we didn't drop the ball. Not once. Then, one night around 9:30 p.m., I got a call from Alejandro. He was still at Ironcrest, hanging on for a paycheck, but barely. "You need to know something," he said. "Darren brought in a guy from corporate last week. Some efficiency specialist. They're going full/and burn. Firing everyone who talks back. The place is falling apart. Is he trying to sabotage the business?" I asked. Alejandro gave a humorless laugh. "No. He's just too stupid to realize that's what he's doing." That's when I told him, "We've got room for one more truck." There was a pause. "Then I'm in," he said. We didn't announce ourselves. No marketing. No press releases. But the freight industry has its own kind of grapevine. And the word that kept showing up in our inboxes, our text threads, our phone calls. Reliable. We didn't undercut prices. We didn't promise what we couldn't deliver. We just showed up. On time. With clean equipment and drivers who gave a damn. We were rebuilding trust while Ironcrest was selling it for scraps. And then came the final piece. Patty emailed me a document titled, Q3 Projections, Internal Use Only. She'd found it before she quit but hadn't shared it yet. It showed that Darren and the investors weren't just planning to shut down Tulsa. They were planning to liquidate everything. Exit strategy, sell remaining assets, dissolve brand, recover investment. They were going to burn it all down to cover their losses. The drivers didn't know. The warehouse workers didn't know. No one did, except us. And we were going to beat them to the punch. Not with sabotage. Not with lawsuits. But with something far more effective. A better way. We didn't need a billboard. We didn't need a TV ad or a flashy press release. We had something more powerful than all of that. Proof. Every day Ironcrest fell further behind, and every day we delivered on time, with dignity and care, another client made the quiet shift. Some only moved 10% of their loads to start, but within a few weeks, most had handed us their entire routes. And just like that, it began. We'd started Riley and Callahan Freight with 2 trucks, a tiny office, and a prayer. By the end of that second month, we had 7 trucks on the road, 5 full-time drivers, and another 3 ready to jump ship from Ironcrest as soon as we could onboard them. But we didn't just grow, we scaled smart. Every truck had regular maintenance protocols. Every route was double-checked and properly scheduled. Every client got a personalized call at least once a week. Darren? He was doing the opposite. Ironcrest began flooding the market with desperate offers, undercutting rates, promising impossible turnaround times, overworking what few drivers hadn't quit. But their trucks kept breaking down. Their deliveries kept running late. And worst of all, clients stopped trusting their promises. Then came the big one. Cornerstone Building Supply. Their account made up 30% of Ironcrest's business, maybe more. If they pulled out, the entire operation would collapse. I got a call from their logistics director, Mike. He didn't mince words. "We're done. The final straw was today's shipment arriving with spoiled product from sitting too long at a broken terminal. My heart raced. "I'm not asking for all your business," I said. "But if you give us a chance." "You already have it," he interrupted. "We're ready to move. You come highly recommended from 4 other partners. And frankly, you were the only reason we stuck with Ironcrest this long." I leaned back in my chair, stunned. "Give us 2 days," I promised. "We'll be ready." Frank poked his head into the office after the call. "You look like you just won the lottery." "We did," I said. "And now it's time to cash it in." We scrambled into action. Frank negotiated a third used Peterbilt for a fraction of its value from a retiring hauler up in Kansas. Our mechanic, Dale, worked overnight prepping the rigs for new hauls. Patty reworked the dispatch schedule to make room for the new loads, barely taking time to eat. By Monday, cornerstone shipments were rolling out under our banner, sleek midnight blue trucks with silver trim, the Riley and Callahan logo freshly painted on the side. That same morning, the Ironcrest lot was half empty. 2 rigs had broken down over the weekend. A third had been pulled over for a logbook violation. And the 4th? Driver quit mid-route. Darren was spinning in circles. Then came the moment that truly cemented it. We got an email from Thompson Foods, our very first client. They were moving 100% of their business to us, effective immediately. I read the message 3 times. "We're yours now," it ended. "Noah, don't let us down." Frank walked into the office while I was staring at the screen. I showed him the email. He didn't say anything at first. Just smiled, wide and quiet. Patty leaned over from her desk. "Another one?" I nodded. "Thompson's going all in. Looks like we're going to need a bigger whiteboard," she grinned. "But success comes with shadows." 2 days later, we got a letter from Ironcrest's legal team. They accused us of tortious interference, poaching, and client manipulation. It was complete nonsense. We hadn't stolen anything. The clients came to us. Still, it rattled me. I called Jenkins. "Don't sweat it," he said. "That's a last-ditch scare tactic. They've got no case. But they're trying to bleed us dry." "They're trying to survive," he corrected. "That's the flailing of a drowning man, not a warning shot." He was right. Again. But we weren't just taking clients anymore. We were being offered them. I got a call from the VP of Northbridge Medical Supplies. "I heard you're the ones who made those holiday emergency runs back in 2017 and 2019, she said. "That was me," I replied. "We've had 3 failed shipments with Ironcrest in the last 2 months. Think you can handle our routes?" "Give us a week," I said. She paused. "Most would promise the moon." "I don't do that," I said. "I promise what we can deliver, and we deliver that." That conversation landed us a 6-figure contract. One afternoon, I drove past the Ironcrest lot. The gates were open. The trucks were parked haphazardly, some with flat tires, others looking like they hadn't been washed in months. Through the office window, I saw Darren pacing, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing wildly. He looked like a man being buried in sand while trying to dig himself out with a straw. And yet, I didn't feel smug. Not really. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about justice. They treated people like numbers. They forgot that relationships move freight faster than any truck. And we were proving it, mile by mile. 2 months had passed since I'd been fired from Ironcrest, and in that time, we had grown from a desperate idea into a rising freight powerhouse. Riley and Callahan Freight now ran 10 trucks, managed 12 active contracts, and had 4 more pending final review. But the truth is, we were nearing capacity. We hadn't expected to grow this fast. Frank and I were putting in 18-hour days, Patty was coordinating more routes than one dispatcher should legally handle, and we had drivers taking back-to-back long hauls just to keep up with the demand. Success, it turns out, can be overwhelming. And just as we started discussing how to pause new contracts until we could expand infrastructure, the twist came. It was 6:45 a.m. when I pulled into the yard and found Doug, the young driver I'd mentored, waiting outside my office. He looked pale. Sweating. Shaking. "We need to talk," he said. I waved him inside, poured coffee, and sat him down. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Ironcrest is about to kill someone." My stomach dropped. Doug told me he had been convinced to stay on part-time at Ironcrest, mostly out of guilt. He was finishing a short-term contract and had planned to fully jump ship in 2 weeks. But yesterday, he said, I was pulled in for a route I didn't accept. It was supposed to be a standard run, but when I checked the logs, the brakes hadn't been serviced in over 60,000 miles. I was speechless. And they knew, he continued. Maintenance had reported it, but Darren told them to hold off on unnecessary expenses. I leaned back in my chair, furious and scared. Doug wasn't done. They're covering up compliance violations, falsifying logbooks, and Darren's instructing dispatch to encourage illegal service hours. It's all in the system. I took photos. He pulled out his phone. Screenshots. Emails. Maintenance reports. And then, the bomb. They're not just trying to cut costs. They're running a fraud scheme. Darren and a few of the execs are siphoning off contract bonuses, falsifying shipments and pocketing the overage payments from emergency rush rates that never happened. I sat in stunned silence as he laid out the rest. Emergency shipments that never existed. Government reimbursements for fake maintenance. Falsified inspection reports. All under Darren's oversight. That's when I realized. Ironcrest wasn't just crumbling because of incompetence. It was being gutted from the inside. Doug handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here. I called Jenkins that afternoon and met him at his usual diner booth. When I showed him the files, his face turned ashen. I built that company on integrity, he muttered. And they've turned it into a criminal enterprise. What do we do? I asked. He looked at me grimly. We expose them. But not in the papers. He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a worn leather business card. It read. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, Internal Compliance Division. You make the call, Jenkins said. I've said my piece. The next day, I met with a federal investigator named Linda Yates. I handed over the flash drive, the photos, the maintenance records. I told her everything. She took it all seriously. Very seriously. By the end of the week, Ironcrest Freight was under active investigation. FMCSA agents began quietly visiting their warehouses, pulling random inspection reports, asking questions. Darren, I later learned, panicked. He fired 2 mechanics. Blamed dispatch. Tried to erase digital logs. But it was too late. The twist was complete. The same company that fired me to cut costs was now being looked at for federal transport fraud and safety violations that could put executives behind bars. And then, as if karma wasn't finished yet, I got a call from Mike at Cornerstone. You're gonna want to hear this, he said. Turns out Ironcrest had failed 3 deliveries in a row for one of their remaining accounts, medical precision tools. Critical equipment delayed. Nearly cost them a government contract. So what did Medical Precision do? They pulled the plug, and called us. That client alone would increase our revenue by 40%. Frank walked into my office that evening with a stunned look. They're going under, Noah. I know, I said quietly. Darren just sent out an internal email, saying they're liquidating within 30 days. I looked out the window at our growing fleet. Painted. Maintained. Trusted. We didn't need to destroy Ironcrest. They did it to themselves. We just built something better, and people came. The headlines hit the local news first. Major freight company under investigation, executives face allegations of fraud and safety violations. By the next morning, trucking forums lit up across the country. Drivers shared horror stories. Mechanics confirmed the cover-ups. Former dispatchers leaked emails Darren had sent threatening to trim the fat or get out. And me? I sat in my office, quietly watching everything unfold. Not out of glee, but out of relief. Because the industry was finally seeing what we'd known all along, Ironcrest didn't fall. It was hollowed out from the inside. The feds moved fast. Darren was subpoenaed for fraudulent safety documentation, violation of labor laws, and possible wire fraud. Word was, the investors were cooperating to save their own skins, but Darren? He'd skipped town. Some said Phoenix. Others said Atlanta. I didn't care. He could run all he wanted. He'd lost everything that mattered. The trust. The reputation. The legacy. And when people Googled his name now, they saw words like investigation, collapse, reckless, and fraud. Meanwhile, back in Tulsa, our company, Riley and Callahan Freight, was humming with life. We now had 15 trucks on the road. 28 full-time employees, including dispatchers, mechanics, and admin staff, most of them former Ironcrest workers. And a fleet waitlist. Clients were begging to book us for next quarter's distribution routes. Our warehouse had expanded to double its original size. We'd added a full maintenance bay. And Jenkins? He came by every morning with fresh donuts, a thermos of coffee, and a story. I thought I was out of the game, he told me one day. But watching this place grow feels like redemption. A few weeks after Ironcrest's collapse, a camera crew showed up at our lot. They were filming a local news piece about freight businesses doing things right. The reporter asked me, "What's the secret to your success?" I looked around. At Patty in dispatch. At Frank under a truck, laughing with Dale. At Alejandro loading up the next route. At Jenkins, leaning on his cane and sipping coffee like a proud father. I answered simply. We never forgot the freight business isn't about trucks. It's about trust. But it didn't truly hit me until that fall. Bill Carmichael invited me to his daughter's wedding. Said it wouldn't be right if Uncle Noah didn't walk her down the aisle when her own dad got cold feet on the dance floor. That night, I sat with Elaine on the patio of the reception hall, watching the Oklahoma sunset burn orange across the sky. How does it feel, she asked. To have built all this? To watch them fall? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, I thought this was going to be a revenge story. She smiled. And it wasn't. It was more than that, I said. It was a rebuild. A rescue. A reminder of who I am, and what I never want to be. We clinked glasses and watched the stars rise over the plains. 6 months after Ironcrest collapsed, I received a letter in the mail. A thin envelope. No return address. Inside was a single page. Typed. Short. You win. D. I stared at it for a long time. Folded it once. Slipped it back into the envelope. And then tossed it in the trash. Because this wasn't about beating Darren anymore. It was about becoming the kind of man I could respect again. A man who didn't just move freight, but moved people forward. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.